there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another eye-popping installment of Cowboy State Politics. From very high above all the pedantic and mendacious forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another exciting day on the program. Today, the Harriet Hageman interview, the first video interview that we're going to do on Cowboy State Politics Live from the brand new studio. I can't wait to show it to you. I keep saying that we're setting the bar quite a bit higher than other programs in this state, will say. And I think that you have to do that. Every program has to, grow and develop, and you have to do things better, and you have to refine your craft. And that's what we're doing here at Cowboy State Politics. So in the second block, we're going to play the Harriet Hageman interview. But before we get there, the reasons why Doge or something like Doge is absolutely necessary. And that actually is one of the big reasons that Harriet was in Laramie during that really, really raucous town hall. And most of the protests, though it was pretty difficult to determine what they were saying because there was so much screaming going on, but most of it was related to the cuts that Donald Trump was making. And let me just give you a great example here. From The Blaze, an article entitled, "Federal Government Spent Eye-Popping Sums on Furniture While Many Worked Remotely. Needed Repairs Stalled." Now, this is on the national level. These are things that Elon Musk has uncovered. But let me give you an example at the local level. It was revealed not that long ago, I think at the last county commissioners meeting, that the Sheridan County Commission spent a tremendous amount of money on furniture. And then one of the conservative members of the county commission went on Amazon and looked up the same furniture. Turns out you could get the same furniture on Amazon from a company in Billings for $125 less per chair. But because that the store that they bought the furniture from is in Sheridan, the county commission bought them there at $125 markup. Now, there in Wyoming, there's a statute that if you go get bids, and let's say one of your local providers, one of your local vendors bid is 5% or less above some of the other bids, well, then you go with the local person. And I think that that's only fair. You should support your local businesses. But when the difference is $125 plus shipping over and above what you could pay somewhere else, absolutely ridiculous. It is a perfect example of waste and absolute abuse of taxpayer money. Now, somewhere I've got the soundbite from Nick Siddle, who is one of the Sheridan County commissioners, and he flat said in a county commissioner meeting that we shouldn't question how different departments spend their money. Excuse me. As far as I'm concerned, the main job of an elected official is to safeguard my taxpayer dollars, but not according to Nick Siddle on the Sheridan County Commission. So that's at the local level. Let's go back to the Blaze piece. Now, this one is at the national level, and it's all economies of scale, really. When you're talking about abuse of taxpayer money, we all understand that, the same behavior exists at a lower level of government, economies of scale. And I quote, the House Oversight Committee subcommittee delivering on government efficiency held a hearing on Tuesday explaining how to reduce the amount of taxpayer funds going toward the federal real estate portfolio. The subcommittee, led by Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, heard testimony from John Hart, the chief executive officer with Open the Books, and David Maroney, the acting director of the Government Accountability Office's physical infrastructure team. Man, they've got so many titles for these government departments, it's really difficult to keep track of them. But here's what they said. The GAO, or the Government Accountability Office, found that these needs had more than doubled from $170 billion to $370 billion between the fiscal year of 2017 till 2024. Hart revealed bombshell information in his opening statement pulled from the Open the Books investigation that found, and listen to this, that the federal government splurged $4.6 billion on furniture since the fiscal year of 2021. He noted that the amount was high enough to purchase a modest $500 kitchen table for 9.2 million American families. Now, just think about that for just a second. They spent $4.6 billion on new furniture. Now, while I'll admit it is kind of important to have a nice looking waiting room in your office, you want it to be kind of welcoming. But we don't need to spend that much money on furniture. I don't know, and maybe Agent 29, you can tell me how things work in your house, but in my house, we don't go buy a new couch just because we want one. If the one we have is nice enough and the dogs haven't scratched it to death and it's welcoming to a guest, we don't go spend money on it. I mean, how does it work at your house?
My house has some government furniture in it.
I no doubt. You've been working for the Fed.
It has one of those old metal desks, the government desks that everybody used to have, the same one. Now it has a couple of reloading presses drilled into the top of it, which is fine. But one thing to think about, and it's not like I'm anywhere near that number, but we have a lot of waiting rooms and offices, things like that. But they also supply furniture for soldiers who are serving overseas. And I remember going to Germany, and basically I got a whole house full of furniture. It was easier for them to take that. It wasn't new. It was stuff that was just brought out of inventory. And some of it was pretty nice. And then when you left, you had the option to purchase at a pretty good price, whatever was there. And so not everything is as cut and dried as it appears. That's a lot of money to spend on furniture.
Oh, man.
But they have a lot of little things like that, I'm sure, that they provide in various places that need to go into the equation. You're not even aware that they're doing it.
Well, you got to think about the size and scope of the federal government. I mean,
Yes.
there are government offices everywhere. If you go to Buffalo, Wyoming, well, here in Sheridan too, just between the two towns, you have the Bureau of Land Management. There's 2 Forest Service offices. There's the Social Security office. There's the Vets Home over in Buffalo. There's the VA clinic here. And just imagine the cost if they were to upgrade all of that furniture in those few buildings. And that's just in 2 small towns within 30 miles of each other. So when you consider the breadth and scope of the U.S. federal government, it probably doesn't take that long to get up to $4.6 billion.
The question would be, where's that new furniture going? Is it going to young soldiers who are deployed without their own household goods?
Probably not. No.
Or is it going to some fat cat administrators?
Well, I mentioned, and I forgot to look up during a break, I'm going to go ahead and look up the name of that agency that they only existed to spend your money. But think about it, right? So you're the fat cat, the top dog at one of these government agencies, and you say, I'm really tired of this desk. I think I need a new one.
Yeah.
And then you don't buy the new one from the, supply store. You go buy the top of the line wood desk.
Let me tell you a story just real quick. I used to do work for the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs.
Nice place, by the way.
Yes, it is.
Place.
And I built a kitchen for the incoming, it would be like the XO, the second in command. They felt like he needed a better place to stay. So they brought us in and we did a new kitchen. Well, when the CO came in, the new commandant, he saw that and he said, well, I've got to have one of my own. And so we got another kitchen out of that deal. There were some other things that went on with that maybe I'll share later after I talk to my lawyer. But, but there is a kind of a feeling that when a new commanding officer, when a new executive officer and an agency comes in, they have a chance to make that space their own. And
but the question is how much? And let me answer that for you.
Change the pictures.
All right. So Hart explained more shocking figures, stating that the Department of State spent $1.4 million on artwork at embassies, including $120,000 on 40 high-end leather recliners. It gets better, though. During the peak years of the COVID pandemic from 2020 to 2022, so just 2 years, agencies spent $3.3 billion on furniture as most work migrated to Zoom. So they're buying furniture and they're not even using it in their office. So absolutely ridiculous.
One thing about that, though, is that furniture now is going to last longer.
Yeah, well, they're not using it because they're not even working there.
I can tell you in Cheyenne, when the new leadership came in, you had a chance to make your office your own. You could move things around. They have an inventory of furniture, so you could shuffle some things out. They have an inventory of artworks, so you could pick what you wanted to put in your office. But I didn't see them running out and buying a bunch of new stuff.
No. All right. So the last sentence, and again, this whole article blows my mind. And, one thing we need for the studio, Agent 29, is a stack of duct tape, just so if needed, I can wrap my head in it and it doesn't explode and we don't have to end up picking up the pieces, out of the whole studio. But listen to this last part. The Department of Justice was among the agencies with an average of 35% attendance. So a little over a third of their entire staff showed up at the office, and yet they managed to spend $500 million on furniture. $408 million. Yeah. See, there we go. The stack of tape. If I need to, of course, it's painter's tape, so I don't know how well it's going to hold the chunks of my head together. So anyway, the whole point I'm getting to here is there is absolutely a need for Doge. And that was one of the reasons that Harriet Hageman was doing town halls. The first one was in Afton. The second one was in Rock Springs. And then the one in Laramie. And it was the town hall in Laramie that, really, really, really went a little crazy. Just to give you an idea of what happened there, go ahead and play cut number 1. Okay, now this is the very beginning of the town hall. I'm going to turn up the volume a little bit.
We're very excited.
Beep. All right. That's enough. Well, that went on for the better part of an hour. An hour is, can you imagine being the person on stage, Harriet, for example, and having to listen to that crap for an entire hour? And she did. She stood up there and, and I don't know, before the show, Mr. Producer and I were talking about, hey, could we stand up on a stage and listen to that garbage for an hour? And I tend to think that I'd listen to about 10 or 15 minutes of it and say, listen, if you don't want to talk, that's fine. I've got better things to do with my time. But, kudos to Harriet for putting up with it. I've got one more soundbite and then we're going to go to a break, but play cut number 2. This one's kind of funny.
It's so bizarre to me how obsessed you are with federal government. But here's the thing.
Listen to him scream.
All Coach is doing is you guys are going to have a heart attack if you don't calm down. I'm sorry, your hysteria.
All right, that's good enough. Really over the top. All right, well, that gives you a sense of what was happening at that town hall. Now, during the interview, which we're going to play here in just a second, after the break, Harriet reveals some things that you've never heard before that I haven't seen before in any of the news reports, in any of the subsequent interviews. I have not heard her tell the story that she reveals in the interview. So we're going to head and go to a break. And when we come back, we'll go ahead and play the interview with U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman, the very first interview in the news studio. That's coming up, and we'll play that. It lasts about 16 minutes, and then we'll come back and finish up the program. More in a minute. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia,
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland, France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I'm just stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
This is the brand new Cowboy State Politics Studio. This program is only going to continue to expand. You can't stop it. You can't stand in the way. It is Cowboy State Politics. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone. Documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. And you know the reason for that is I actually do my homework and check my facts, which is something that the mainstream media, the Cowboy, they don't normally do, or Pile, or definitely the Sheridan Press. So just stick with Cowboy State Politics. Now, as I mentioned before the break, there was a big reason why Harriet was doing all the town halls. And one of those is that she has made it a point to visit every single county. I think she said at least once a year. And so when she got to Afton, I think that was like her 70th or 73rd, or I mean, it's a big number of her public appearances. And that one got infiltrated by Democrats. Infiltrated is the wrong word, but there were a bunch of people from Jackson that went to that town hall. And then there was Rock Springs. And that one started to get a little out of hand. Joe Barbudo got all the Democrats there and got them riled up. And actually in that one, Harriet gave Joe the opportunity to tell him to calm down and, maybe we could work together and we could have a conversation. He didn't want that. And then there was the town hall in Laramie. From Laramie, I think the very next one was Wheatland, and that one got out of hand. Security had to get involved. So there's been a big narrative as to why Harriet canceled her in-person town halls for a little bit. That is one of the things that I asked her about during our interview. So here is my interview with U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman. It's the first one on Cowboy State Politics Live. It runs about 16 minutes, and we're going to play the entire thing. Here it goes. Joining me for the first interview at the new Cowboy State Politics Live studio is U.S. Congresswoman Harriet Hageman. Harriet, welcome back to the program.
Hi, David. It's great to be here. Congratulations on your new studio.
Thank you. We've been working really hard on it, and I'm just excited to play with all the bells and whistles. And I thought if there's one interview I could get for the first time, it would be you. So I've got a number of things that I want to talk to you about. And first, I guess a good question, just broadly, would be how are things going in D.C.?
Things are interesting in DC right now. We've got some challenges, as everyone knows. We actually left early last week because we had an issue with some folks wanting to pursue proxy voting, which I am opposed to for a variety of reasons. But I think we're back on track this week, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to take up some good bills, including one that would prohibit district court judges from issuing nationwide injunctions. And then another one that I'm a strong supporter of and a co-sponsor of is the SAVE Act, which would require proof of citizenship to be able to vote in federal elections.
Now, you and I've talked about the judges before on the program, but could you just quickly tell my listeners why what is happening with these district court judges is absolutely outside of their jurisdiction? I don't think a lot of people really understand what's going on there.
So a couple of things. First of all, the Constitution only provides for the Supreme Court, and then it's up to Congress create such other courts as are necessary, and that's what we've done. And there are 660 plus district court judges across the United States. And what they are supposed to do is decide cases that are in front of them, the cases or controversies that are brought in their courts. And jurisdiction is typically limited to the individuals that are in front of their courts. So, a plaintiff and a defendant, that's who they have jurisdiction over. By district court judges issuing nationwide injunctions, they're essentially usurping the authority of the United States Supreme Court, but they're also usurping the authority of every other court in the nation. That's very rare. It's only been in the last 20 to 25 years you've even seen very many nationwide injunctions, and now they're kind of being handed out like candy. Another issue that I have is under Rule 65, the courts are required to require bonding for anybody who seeks an injunction in the event that injunction is eventually vacated. Such bonding is to cover all of the costs that would be associated with that injunction. So, for example, the district court judge out in California issuing a nationwide injunction prohibiting the Trump administration from revoking the temporary status of 330,000 Venezuelans, to the extent that there are government costs associated with that, which we know that there are for housing and food and shelter and various things. The parties to that case should be required to post a bond, and these district court judges.
All right. So I want to talk about your town halls because there have been a ton of articles that I've seen, various different perspectives. And so since I have you, I guess the first question would be, after that crazy town hall in Laramie, what happened to cause you to say, all right, no more, we're not doing it in person for a while? Just tell me what happened.
So, David, were you there that evening? I didn't.
I
see
was
you,
not
so
able to be there, but I watched it on
Okay.
video. That was fun.
Well, it was much worse in person than the video. I've watched a couple of segments of the video, and it was a lot worse in person. That didn't really do it justice. So the purpose of town halls is for me to engage with the constituency. And typically what I do is I'll do 20, 25 minutes of giving a summary and an overview of what's been happening in Washington, D.C., my bills, what I've been voting on, what we've been doing in committee. And then I open the rest of it up to questions. But if there are going to be people there who are not going to allow me to, number one, give my presentation or my summary, or number two, allow people to engage with me, they really just become scream fest, which is kind of what happened during the course of the Rock Springs or the Sweetwater County town hall from a couple of weeks ago. We were able to get through it, but there were about 40 people out of the 300 who were very obnoxious and were just simply not going to allow me to engage with the public. They were using the heckler's veto to violate my First Amendment right and the First Amendment rights of every other person in that room. Then we went to Laramie, and it's a college town, Albany County. We anticipated that there might be some disruption. I had no idea of the magnitude of what that disruption would be. Now, there were a lot of people from Laramie and Albany County there. There were people from the university there. I know that because I've talked to them. And then other people have written letters about what they observed. But there were also some what I would assume were paid provocateurs.
I think
or
they were.
disruptors. I would watch them because I was up on the stage, and what you'd see is when things started calming down and people were listening to me and I was engaging with them, they would start riling up the crowd again. They'd walk towards the front, they'd start screaming and yelling, using profanity, using horrible gestures and different things. So they were intentionally riling up the crowd regardless of what the discussion was about. But there were other incidents. The next day we were in Wheatland, and a woman became physical with one of my staffers. The police had to intervene. It was entirely inappropriate. My staffer was trying to protect me because she saw this woman getting way too close and way too aggressive. That was unnecessary. The other thing that concerned me was we had 20 police officers at the event in Wheatland. Well, that means that's 20 people who weren't out, patrolling the neighborhoods,
Right.
on the streets and highways. And I don't want to deflect those kinds of resources simply because people can't behave themselves at what should be a public event and just basically a dialogue and a discussion. But there was also a situation where we've all heard of swatting, and that has increased pretty dramatically over the last month or so around the United States, with other members being swatted. And there's a precursor to what people will do when they're going to do that. And there was a woman who they found her. There was an incident at my house. She was actually from Pennsylvania. We got the Capitol Police involved, and they investigated it, found the woman who did this. And it was a situation where it was a precursor to a swatting. We're not going to wait for that to happen. And I just felt that, you know what, let's just kind of take the temperature down a little bit. This doesn't mean that I'm not going to be doing in-person town halls, but I just decided that for the Laramie County and the Goshen County, which, as you know, is my home county,
Right.
I just thought for both of those, let's take the temperature down, let's do a teletown hall. And really, David, they went extremely well. I had over 1,000 people participate with the Laramie County one, and I had
Wow.
over 500 people in Goshen County. So they were highly successful, great questions, great engagement. I was very pleased with how both of them turned out.
I did see another piece, and I'm pretty sure it was from like Cap City News or Oil City News, one of those professional propagandists. And they made a claim that there were some folks who wanted to participate in your town hall, and that they registered online, and they just never got any sort of notification that they could join the town hall. So, to your knowledge, was there anybody that was intentionally excluded? I mean, I know you wouldn't do that, but I just want to hear you say it.
David, I'm a congressman. I'm not a tech head. We hire people to do that. We hire a service, and they put it together, and they do the calls, and they have the technology. I have nothing to do with that. If someone was inadvertently excluded, it would have been a technical error from the company that provided the service. I wouldn't even know who to exclude. I don't get a list
Right.
of people that says these are the people that are trying to get in and that you shouldn't like. I mean, that's just silly, and it's a bizarre allegation. I think I've been one of the most accessible representatives
Absolutely.
we've had in a long time. And if people have a question, if they want to call my office or if they want to send me a letter, we will respond. I'm not trying to exclude anybody. And I think people are just far too sensitive right now. I don't know why people are lashing out the way that they are.
Well,
They're
and I
getting a
think
little wild.
I think that my own personal theory is that in other states, this group Indivisible has absolutely been sponsoring or pushing people to show up at town halls. And I don't have any evidence that that's happening here in Wyoming, but it kind of fits the pattern. The next topic I'd like to get into with you is to get your perspective on all the tariffs. I'm pretty sure I have an idea what you think about it, but what's your perspective on all the tariffs that Trump's been doing?
Again, it's this hair on fire reaction to everything he does, regardless of what it is. And I think that what he's exposing is that the United States has not been in free trade or fair trade agreements with countries for a long, long time. And as a result, we've paid the price. We've got $37 trillion in debt. I heard today that we import over billions of dollars worth of cattle and meat from Australia and other countries every year, but we don't have access to their market to export beef to them. I was visiting with some folks from the southern part of Wyoming down near Baggs the other day. They're selling out most of their sheep crop because they can't compete with New Zealand lamb that's coming into our country. They were talking about a menu that they recently saw where it said American raised lamb, $85 for a rack, New Zealand raised lamb, $55 per rack. Well, they can't compete with that. And so it is this unfair trade situation around the world is putting our small independent businesses out of business and has been for quite some time. And he's trying to right that ship. He wants to enter into fair trade agreements with countries around the world. We want the free flow of goods, but when we're subsidizing other countries and we're not getting access to their markets, whereas they're getting access to ours with very low tariffs or no tariffs at all, I think that we need to address this. Now, as far as Wall Street and what's going on there, again, I think they need to calm down. And as I think that this kind of works its way through the system, I think that we're going to get back on an even keel. And I think that Wall Street's going to be better than ever. The stock market's going to be better than ever. I also want to say that it's protecting Main Street should be one of our priorities. And I know it's a priority of the president and it's a priority of mine. We need to find ways of bringing manufacturing back to the United States. And this is one of the ways to do it. In fact, when we went through COVID, I wrote an editorial. You could probably find it online. And I think the headline was something along the lines of Wyoming is open for business, and advocating for bringing manufacturing to Wyoming and stop being dependent upon sometimes very hostile countries around the world for the goods that we need. So I see this as a step in the right direction. I think that things will calm down if people will just, again, take a step back, take a deep breath, recognize that we have been not in free trade or fair trade agreements for quite some time. Everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's the hair on fire reaction to anything, in Trump's orbit. And the truth is, we haven't had fair trade for a really long time. I mean, it's really been a system where we've allowed American businesses to be absolutely exploited to the benefit of, to a large degree, Chinese companies, or really it's the Chinese government. American companies can't compete when you're facing, 50 and 60% tariffs. It's just ridiculous.
That's right.
All right. Well, I guess the other thing that I really wanted to talk about this morning, I did an episode about our attorney general not pursuing any sort of election related complaints. And while I was doing the episode, I was like, well, I'm going to be talking to Harriet in a few minutes. So I think I'll just ask her. One of the media narratives here at home is that there just aren't any election-related crimes that happen. First, I think that that's absolutely not true at all. But I wanted to get your take on it. Do we need to have more? Do we need to tighten up our elections? Do we need to pass more legislation here in Wyoming? What's your take on it?
I think targeted legislation is absolutely appropriate. I think at a minimum, at a bare minimum, we need to show ID to be able to vote. And I don't mean 100 different forms of ID or even a student ID, because if you look at student IDs at the university, they don't even have a date on them.
Yeah.
I think you need to have something like a driver's license, a passport, an official form of identification. And that should be a bare minimum. Now, I know that we have that in Wyoming, and that's a good thing that came into existence a couple of years ago. But what I find interesting is that even talking about the subject gets people upset, and I don't understand why. If there were ways in which and ideas about shoring up our elections, solidifying our elections, making them more secure, I don't understand why people would be opposed to that. I want to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. And I think that that's what our Secretary of State and his office seek to do as well. So anytime people get upset when you start talking about election integrity, I think it speaks volumes. We should all care about election integrity.
Absolutely. And in my experience, those people who are adamantly opposed to it, you can kind of look at, their electoral, history, and you say, well, there's a good reason why they don't, because they've never won an election with 50% of the vote. All right. So last question I have for you, and I'm sure you've had this one a lot too, but so you're going to run for governor?
Right now, I am busy representing my constituents as the lone representative in the House, in Congress. David, I haven't made that decision yet. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm very excited and very honored that I represent Wyoming in the U.S. House of Representatives.
Well, Harriet, thank you very much for taking some of your valuable time and coming on the program. I very much appreciate it. And good luck with dealing with all those people in D.C.
Thank you, David. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye. All right. I think we're good. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, David.
That was the Harriet Hageman interview on Cowboy State Politics Live, the very first interview that we've done. It's and I can't say thank you enough to Representative Hageman. A great interview, and we're going to have more interviews as the program goes on. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk about one more thing that President Trump the Supreme Court has said that he can do. Shocker, the boss can fire people. More in a minute. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia.
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada.
Straight to hell.
Iceland, France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger.
Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, Cowboy, State Politics Live, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Now, if you missed the Harriet Hageman interview, I'm going to play the whole interview on the podcast this morning. It's going to post at 10 a.m., and so you can listen to the entire thing. If you just, you couldn't bring yourself to watch Cowboy State Politics Live, you can listen to it on the podcast this morning, or at some point, we'll probably post the entire interview so that you can watch it. But welcome back to the program. Thank you to Representative Hageman for taking the time. If you want to be part of the program, we've opened up the phone lines. And the phone number here in the Cowboy State Politics studio is 307-374-8989. If you want to talk about the Harriet Hageman, what she had to say, her potential swatting, wasn't that incredible? Like I hadn't seen that anywhere else. And then she said that they caught somebody basically casing her house. And we live in a really, really different time. But I reject the claim that it's more divisive now than it has ever been. I don't even think that that's true. This doesn't even hold a candle to around 1865, like pre-Civil War. Nobody's been beaten half to death on the floor of Congress. There aren't any Charles Sumners running around. But I think that we would be remiss if we didn't actually say, well, yeah, there is some division going on there. And interestingly enough, I had a conversation with one of the folks that I guess you would say they're more moderate. And it was yesterday, day before. Anyway, I suggested, hey, we're all Republicans. Why don't we work on outrageous government spending? And I made some crack about a $3 million flower pot and how it's ridiculous that they used road and bridge money to take out a road, and asked the person on the other side. I said, well, don't you find that kind of ironic that we're wasting money building a flower garden, which, by the way, it isn't very pretty anyway. But and they agreed with me, and I said, okay, great. Well, let's put together a committee. Let's watch where our tax dollars are being spent. But that, my friends, was a bridge too far. And wouldn't go there, wouldn't talk about setting up a committee, wouldn't talk about, even doing anything about government spending. And I think the reason for that is there is an ideological split that if you are a Democrat, or if you're just a redcoat and you aren't going, you're just ideologically compelled not to agree with anything on the other side. And it's I think that it's a function of the media overblowing. We started out the program before Harriet's interview playing pieces from that town hall, and I think it's pretty clear. I would say a lot of those were students, and probably many of them were bussed in from out of state. I think that's absolutely the case. But not allowing somebody to speak, well, that just means you're not interested in having a conversation. And I think that we've been at that point several times in our history, but I don't think that we're anywhere close to, the most divided we've ever been. I think that's overblown. So one of the other things that has been happening is the Supreme Court has started to weigh in on all of these lawsuits, and there are hundreds of lawsuits that have been filed against actions of the Trump administration, and one of those is against his, firing or layoffs. I guess layoffs is probably the better term for it. But there again, if you're laid off, you're kind of fired. Maybe it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg. From The Blaze, in an article entitled "Supreme Court Sides with Trump Administration Against an Order to Reinstate Thousands of Probationary Federal Workers." First of all, they're probationary, which means they're kind of at-will employees. And all employees should be at will, by the way. I completely disagree with this idea that, to get rid of somebody who's doing a bad job, you have to go through all of this, mediation and meetings and HR and all that. I think if you're doing a bad job, you ought to get canned. Or if the boss just doesn't like you, you ought to get canned. I disagree with this entire thing of, you can't fire me. I'm a tenured employee. Bull crap. And the big joke, and Agent 29, maybe you can weigh in on this, but the big joke down in Cheyenne is, have you ever tried to fire a teacher? Good luck with that.
I was just going to comment that Trump never laid anybody off. They're fired.
You're fired. We got to come up with that soundbite too. You're fired. So, all right, from the place, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled against a group of unions and granted an emergency request from the Trump administration to allow them to fire thousands of probationary federal workers as part of the president's plan to cut government spending. Attorneys for the unions argued that the administration did not follow the proper procedures when the Office of Personnel and Management issued a memo on January 20th ordering agencies to determine whether probationary workers should be retained. The office followed up with an email ordering the agencies to fire the remaining probationers. Quote, under established law, those allegations are presently insufficient to support the organization's standing. So in other words, the union doesn't have any business suing. And it's, we have such a bloated federal government, and not just the federal government, state government. Let me give you a great example here. Now, I got this statistic a couple of years ago, so it may have changed a little bit. But 2 years ago, the enrollment in Wyoming schools had, over the previous 4 years, had gone down about 1,900 students. So we're talking, from 2019 to 2021, 2022, somewhere around there. So enrollment had actually gone down about 1,900. During that same time period, administration and staff had gone up 3,600 positions. Now, just think about that for a minute. You lose about 2,000 students, the people that the staff and the administration are there to support, and yet you hire 3,600. So, I mean, you doubled the amount that you lost. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And, if you want to know why we're spending $20,000 per student on the state level, it's because of that. And if you look at the federal workforce, all of these probationary employees, like they ballooned during the Biden administration. What was it? They were going to hire 80,000 IRS agents. I mean, just absolutely incredible. Well, let's see here. I'm actually going a little bit long, so let's go ahead and take our last break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Governor Mark Gordon and Chuck Gray getting into it again. Apparently, Governor Gordon doesn't like the idea that his regulations would have to have some scrutiny. I mean, weird. Why would he be upset with the legislature trying to tell him, Gov, can't do that. We're not going with that regulation. We'll be back. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. If you miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics Live, you can always go to the live replay, which is located at the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, under the live replay button. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. In yet another cruel blow to the nation of China, General Tso's chicken is to be renamed General Don's Oriental Chicky Nugs. From the Babylon Bee, and I quote, global tensions over tariffs continue to rise amid the ongoing trade war as the White House announced that General Tso's chicken would be renamed General Don's Oriental Chicky Nugs. The renaming of the popular Chinese dish was only the latest move made by the Trump administration to increase pressure on the Chinese government to reach a new normal in international trade relations, with Trump pledging not to budge on the new name. And I quote from Trumpy, they're sweet, they're savory, they're spicy, and now they're named after me, Donald Trump, the president told reporters aboard Air Force One when the news broke. So sorry, China. I don't know what you're going to do with General Tso's chicken. Well, we've been talking about a lot of pretty heavy stuff on the program. Oh, by the way, we've still got about 10 minutes or so left in the show. If you want to opine on what we've been talking about, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989, if you want to be part of the program. Let's do a little moment of baseball zen. We haven't done that for a while. Cut number 4.
That's drilled towards the right field corner. That one back, and that one is gone. Seager's second of the day as he hooked that one into the basket in right. And it's 6-1.
He's hit at least 30 in each of the last 3 seasons. First time,
that's my boy Corey
Seager.
Seager.
In left center this time, a pulled home
How
run.
come you never
So
play a
strong.
Rockies highlight?
Because they suck.
Really uses his legs.
You know,
Really
actually, Ken, I was a Rockies fan,
powerful swing.
and I went through the trials and tribulations of being a Rockies fan, them getting pounded in the World Series by the Boston Red Sox. I mean, I was with them, man. And then they traded Nolan Arenado, and they traded every other person that could even understand what game they were playing. And now they just stink. Though, I have to say, though, last summer, the lovely Christine and I went down to Denver to watch a game. And, the Rockies swept my Texas Rangers, which, I mean, last year the Rangers stunk anyway. But, I'm no longer a Rockies fan.
It is fun to go to Coors Field, though.
The Coors Field's a great
It's still
venue.
a nice park.
Absolutely.
It's hard to believe it's, 30 years old now.
I know. And it's still, when I think of the Rockies, I still think of them as one of the expansion teams, which of course they were, but it's been 30 years and they still stink. So Governor Gordon is not happy with a new law that he allowed a new law that he allowed to become law without his signature. Let's go ahead and play a piece from the Cowboy. Now, hold on, before you play it, I cannot stand to watch videos from the Cowboy. First of all, they hardly ever give you the full perspective. And our program, Agent 29, is so much better than theirs. But anyway, go ahead and play. Let's see here. It's cut number 3. Go ahead and hit it.
Governor Mark Gordon isn't pleased about a new law that gives the legislature and the public more oversight of the rules that Wyoming state government agencies make and on which he has the final say to approve or deny. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson reports that during a Board of Land Commissioners meeting last week, Gordon said he'll honor the spirit of the new law, Senate Enrolled Act 59, which he attempted to veto. But he pointed out that the law may slow down rulemaking at the state level.
He does not plan to sign off on any new administrative rules until the majority of the legislature says they approve them too. He does not want to have the legislature overturn a rule that he has passed and basically what he sees as amounting to increasing administrative oversight. Senator Brian Boner of Douglas said that he appreciates that the governor is really respectful.
I can't take it anymore. Trotsky. So, of course, Governor Gordon sees it as more oversight because Governor Gordon doesn't want anybody reviewing the rules that he makes. And I'll give you a perfect example. Of course, this wasn't totally him, but the building commission. The building commission decided that, well, we're going to let you carry your firearm in some areas of the Capitol, but we're not really going to let you carry them in other places. So in the end of that rule was you could carry it in the lobby. You could carry it in the Capitol extension, which is still part of the lobby, but you can't carry it in any of the rooms and you can't carry it in the chamber. So really, if you're doing anything in the Capitol, you can't carry your firearm. So why is it that the legislature shouldn't get the okay or get the final say and say, you know what, we're not going to do this regulation or that regulation? There needs to be some administrative review, especially when you get a leftist like Mark Gordon in there. And yeah, I get it. He's a Republican, but the only reason he hangs that R at the end of his name is so that he could get elected. Thank God he's in his last term. Lame duck. I mean, I'm so sick of him. But let's go to the piece from Trotsky Wolfson in the Cow Pie. And I quote, during the Board of Land Commissioners meeting last week, Gordon said he'll give above and beyond deference to the legislature to honor the spirit of the new law, planning to wait until a majority of state legislatures sign off on a major rule before he does so himself. Quote, which may be slowing down rulemaking, which may be problematic, but I think that's the issue that we have. Okay, so Gordo doesn't want to get overruled. That's what's happening here. The whole spirit of the law is that if an agency passes a law, and the state DEQ passed a rule not that long ago that they're going to increase fees on emissions. And they did it after the election, and they doubled the fees. I think they doubled the fees from the previous year. And so it's those type of regulations that the legislature wants to have the final say on. And Governor Gordon doesn't want that because he wants to have the final say on everything. Well, we got to have some oversight. If you want to reduce regulations, if you want to have, a free and open market, we have got to get rid of a lot of the regulations. And the idea that Wyoming is a solidly red state and that we're super uber duper conservative, I mean, that's just not true. We've had a governor, multiple governors. In fact, I don't think that maybe we haven't had a conservative governor because we've had 2 terms of Mark Gordon, 2 terms of Matt Mead, and before him we had, was it Freudenthal? I think it was Freudenthal, and then before him it was Mike Sullivan. So we've had liberals the entire way out. And now that we finally got a conservative legislature, or at least a conservative House of Representatives, and I guess kind of conservative Senate, they need to have some oversight over some of this rulemaking. So Gordo's not happy, and good for him. I'm not in the business of making Gordon happy. The guy irritates the crap out of me. And let's see here. What else? We've got about 3 minutes left in the program. What else do I have in the stack of stuff here? Well, here's a classic. This just shows you how off base the Democrats are. You remember this soundbite? Cut number 6. No.
19 senior political and global affairs.
Okay, play cut 5. Sorry, my bad.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before.
Of course. That is former Chief of Staff to Barack Obama, Rahm Emanuel. The old, you never want to let a crisis go to waste. And what the Democrats are thinking right now is that before yesterday, the stock market was in free fall because of all this fear about all the tariffs. Now, as I mentioned on the program multiple times, nothing has happened to cause the stock market to crash. It's all this, like Harriet put it, the hair on fire rhetoric and all this. Well, the Democrats are thinking that they can capitalize on all this stock market fluctuation, but they didn't see yesterday coming. Now, go ahead and play cut number 6.
Last night, CNN senior political and global affairs commentator Rahm Emanuel, who served as White House chief of staff in the Obama administration. He's also the former mayor of Chicago and former U.S. ambassador to Japan. There has been this whole question of, is it negotiation that he's after? Is this going to be long tariffs? Where do you?
I think they got you right where they want you. I think there's a negotiation camp and there's a retaliation camp. And you can see through the leaks or comments that depending on who the president talks to last, both are being said. I mean, as a Trumpologist, I would say that he's going to negotiate pretty soon with 1 or 2, Japan, Israel are in, and say, look, this was always the plan. See how they came running to me, because I think the
okay, all right. I've had enough of this Democrat. So the whole point here is that the Republicans, they're just kind of flying by the seat of their pants. They don't have any idea what's going on. Well, they kind of miscalculated a little bit because the stock market went up 8% yesterday. 8%. And so it's just another piece of evidence that the Democrats don't really have any idea what's going on because they're being completely outplayed. Well, we've burned through another busy broadcast hour on the program. Make sure that you don't miss a single episode. I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. We'll see you tomorrow.